From an exhausting and literally decimating war to a period of political and economic isolation, Vietnam has recently emerged as a desirable destination for the discerning traveller. But the spectre of the war still colours the worldview of Vietnam, 40 years after the Americans pulled out. So, does the Vietnamese tourism industry need to free itself from the legacy of the war? And how does this country avoid the environmental and cultural pitfalls that tourism has meant for some of its neighbours? On my journey, I'll be exploring the capital Hanoi, going underground to experience life in a recently unearthed wartime bunker. Then it's to Vietnam's coastal jewel, Hoi An, for a cookery masterclass and a made-to-measure shirt in less than 24 hours. And finally, I witnessed something very special indeed. New hope of survival for the endangered sea turtle. Join me, Rajan Datar, as we fast-track through Vietnam. Of all the journalistic assignments in my career, this could be the most dangerous. Yup, crossing the road here as a tourist is almost a rite of passage in Vietnam. It's a huge bus coming. Don't be fooled by the zebra crossing, by the way. It might as well be street art. Keep walking, they told me. Keep walking, don't hesitate, just keep going. That's the trick. Keep going. Yes, I've done it. Hanoi recently celebrated its 1000th birthday. What was once the power base of the North Vietnamese communists is now the capital of a reunified country, one of the few remaining communist states in the world. It's here in Hanoi that revolutionary leader Ho Chi Minh declared independence from the French in 1945. And it's also where he's buried. This is where the French colonialists set up their administrative headquarters, and you can see their influence all around, especially here in the old part of the city. This city of 7 million people has refused to adopt the bulldozer approach to its historic architecture, taken by so many other Asian cities. And it's all the more interesting for that. It's also where you'll find the relics of war. Burnt-out shells of enemy bombers, anti-aircraft missiles and rusty tanks. Skeletons of a conflict that took place before most of today's Vietnamese population were even born. Some 8 million tons of bombs were dropped here. Today, tourism is very much part of the rebuilding of the nation. And yet, ironically, the war has become a tourist attraction in itself. This, after all, was the first televised war. Hanoi was bombed many times by the Americans from the air. Thousands died, and many key buildings and bridges were destroyed. But like the rest of North Vietnam, Hanoi refused to be broken.
Many
travelers, including Americans, are very moved when they see the memorabilia of war here. They see a very tragic part of our history, a history that makes us more determined to protect peace. Maybe more than anyone else. After having gone through so much, we love peace more than anyone else.
Over half the population in Vietnam own a scooter, and sometimes it feels like they're all on the road at exactly the same time.
Hanoi has meant many things during its long history. City of the soaring dragon, city on the bend of a river. But today, it's more like city in a hurry, making up for lost time.
Okay, let's give it to him right now.
This really is the nearest you'll get to like being in a scooter rally. It's just astonishing. A whole sea of Vespa bikes streaming down this road and all around the city. Cool.
Let's go.
The Metropole is perhaps the most famous hotel in Hanoi. Graham Greene, Charlie Chaplin and Somerset Maugham were all guests. And during the 1960s and early 1970s, it's where diplomats and high-ranking American prisoners of war were put up by the North Vietnamese government. As the war became more and more unpopular in the USA, the occasional visiting American celebrities stayed here too. Jane Fonda checked in during her controversial trip in the summer of 1972. And later that year, singer Joan Baez took refuge in a bunker underneath the hotel as the Americans launched their massive Christmas bombing campaign from above, killing more than 1,600 people in Hanoi. She later used sounds recorded in the bunker on her anti-war album, Where Are You Now, My Son? When the war finally dragged to an end, the bunker that had protected Baez and many others was concreted over and forgotten. That was until a new general manager heard stories about the hotel's wartime past and decided to launch a search for the air raid shelter.
We finally had a small hole and we found water. And we put a bamboo stick down and we realized, okay, that's about 2 meters, a bit less than that. And then we pumped out the water because it was full up to the top. And then I went down there for the first time and I was amazed.
Today, a former hotel chef who worked here during the war is paying a visit. It's the first time he's seen the bunker in 45 years, and he's agreed to take me down with him.
This is about 2 meters wide here. It's not very different from the old days. I feel as if it were only yesterday that I sent our guests here to hide from bombs, American bombs. In every area we would fit 30 people in tightly. Here there are some guests who carved their names in. I don't know which room that is. Their names are carved in up here. This tunnel was built in 1968. I was very young, a teenager then. It seems like only yesterday.
Wow. It is stiflingly hot down there and horribly claustrophobic. And frankly, I can't imagine spending 15 minutes there, let alone a whole night worrying about bombs coming down. And then you come out here, you see the opulence of this hotel, the luxury, and it's a bizarre contrast. It's surreal.
"20 years ago, hardly any tourists came to Vietnam. Now, around 7 million visit every year. Living standards have risen dramatically here too since the late 1990s. Despite that, average income is still relatively low, and that means that your tourist dollar will go a long way. Small wonder then that the country has become popular with a growing number of young travellers and backpackers who see Vietnam as a hip, more stylish and indeed innocent alternative to Thailand. The problem is, though, sometimes it's the naivety of the tourists themselves that's exploited here.
I was kind of intimidated by a motorbike driver. He wanted to show me the city, kind of, and we agreed to a certain price. And yeah, well, he just tried after that to make me pay this amount, like 100,000 Vietnamese dong each kilometer, as for the whole itinerary.
Well, somebody will sidle up alongside you and me and say, fellas, look, I can do it cheaper for you. Then on the way into town, or just as we get into town, they'll some geezer jumps into the taxi and goes, fellas, I'm really sorry, the hotel you've selected is full, but I'm from there and I'll take you to our sister hotel. And we go, oh, that sounds okay. And that's where the fun starts.
One survey by TripAdvisor suggested that experiences like these were deterring tourists from making return trips to the country. While haggling and bargaining can be an expected holiday hassle in this part of the world, the Vietnamese government say the introduction of meter taxis, information centres and tourist police in some areas is helping to crack down on the scammers who prey on visitors from overseas.
This is a tune right here, and I have to make different tracks, like drum track, bass track.
Despite his accent, Bush, otherwise known as DJ Slolo, has never been to North America. He uses samples, sounds and recordings from everyday life in Vietnam, embracing all sorts of different dance music influences and giving them a local flavour.
More Vietnamese people come in and actually like appreciate the music and dance to it.
For Bush, his music doesn't represent political rebellion, it's about cultural and social change. He and his friends are attracted by Western-style liberties to stay out late, travel abroad and use social media freely. Any tension is between their youthful individualism and the more authoritarian approach of the older generation.
It's cultural, it's nothing bad at all, you know. So I just hope that they understand the younger generation and, like, you know, support them to do things, do good things.
And what of the Vietnam that many tourists still associate with the war? Is this the country Bush identifies with?
Most of the people here are over the war, like so over it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, you know, mention it. I want tourists to think of Vietnam as a developing country with cultures, with music, with art, more than like, oh, it's easy, it's a cheap country, just go there and get wasted.
Join us in part 2 as I leave Hanoi and head south to Hoi An for a masterclass in Vietnamese cuisine and see one of nature's miracles taking place on an island off the Vietnamese coast. It's 7 p.m. and the SC-1 bound from Hanoi in the north of Vietnam to the south awaits. These trains are the reliable workhorses of the country. And this line is known as the Reunification Railway, in honour of the country becoming as one again in the mid-1970s after decades of war. All major cities in this long, thin country are linked by reliable and relatively cheap domestic flights. But if you really want a low-budget option, there's also a vast network of air-conditioned overnight coaches. But don't expect to get too much sleep on any of those. And self-drive car hire here certainly isn't a good idea for the faint-hearted. So we decided to let the train take the strain. More than 1,000 miles and 30 hours to get to Ho Chi Minh, formerly Saigon in the south. But I'm getting off halfway. My destination, the coastal city of Da Nang. In the meantime, I'll try and get some sleep. Dawn and the dewy countryside of central Vietnam is at its most beguiling.
It's been an incredible experience. I've had a few hours sleep, but what I've been really impressed by is the inventiveness and resilience of people here to find little spaces, little nooks and crannies in which to sleep. And people are so nice and generous to each other.
"650 kilometres south of Hanoi, Hoi An was once a busy international trading port that lay dormant for centuries until it reinvented itself as a picture postcard town, a model of how Vietnam wants its tourism to develop. The Chinese influence is clear here, with its narrow, quaint streets and old temples. The old town is a UNESCO heritage site, and the hundreds of distinctive old mustard-coloured buildings are protected too. But these days, the town is fast becoming as famous for the sartorial as the architectural.
I hear you make fantastic shirts that are as good as they are on Savile Row in London, so I'm really keen on trying one and finding one, please. Getting close to Hawaiian style, aren't we?
This is fast fashion. Although the designs may be lifted from foreign catalogues and celebrity magazines, the tailoring is local. For $45, my shirt should be ready in less than 24 hours.
So this one?
That one.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like it nice and not too baggy, slim.
What we're going to show you today is how to make salad roll, one of fresh spring roll, and then we're
At the Morning Glory Cookery School, yes, it really is called that, it's the name of a local herb apparently, Madam Vi is giving a masterclass.
After cooked vegetable.
But the speciality dish here is khao lao, consisting of rice noodles, bean sprouts, herbs, spices, and thin slices of soy-simmered pork.
Yeah, looking beautiful. Good job. I'm going to show you how to make one of the Hoi An noodle, very special, called khao lao.
I'm putting the bean sprouts in here?
Yeah, bean sprout in here. Okay, so
Good.
we need also the same quantity for noodle.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, you need some pork.
A little bit of pork, how much?
Yeah, a few slices.
It looks very fatty. I mean, it doesn't look very healthy, surely.
We need fat because we have no dairy.
Oh, you don't eat dairy here,
yeah,
do you? Right,
no buttermilk, cheese, cream in our cuisine. We used to have two types of pork. One is lean, 100%.
Right.
And some of the fat one is we used to serve for local people.
I understand. So
Yeah.
the tourists get the leaner stuff, and the locals eat the fattier pork.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Now, I'm just beginning to realise the crouton is French. Yeah?
Yes.
The pork, I guess, is a Chinese thing. The
you're right.
noodles is a Japanese thing.
Yes.
And the herbs are all local,
Yes, from the garden here.
which sums up
Yes.
Hoi An.
That's make Hoi An food special.
And before leaving Hoi An, there's just enough time to pick up my shirt.
So here you go, and do you know what? I'm impressed. I like the details, the fit, the size is all very good. And to be honest with you, I wanted to find some fault with it, and I genuinely can't. One very happy customer.
For my next journey, I'm heading further south, beyond Ho Chi Minh, formerly Saigon. Away from the mainland, the Con Dao Islands are Vietnam at its most raw, natural and undeveloped. But for the Vietnamese, there's another reason to visit, to pay their respects to the nation's heroes and martyrs. It was once a dumping ground for thousands of political prisoners during the fight against first the French and then American and South Vietnamese forces. But today, most international visitors come for wildlife and the coral reef. 80% of the islands are designated as national parkland. On this remote sanctuary for the last 10 years, there's been a concerted effort to monitor the green or sea turtle to save it from extinction, especially during the critical nesting season.
We save their eggs on the sand where they lay eggs to avoid these eggs being eaten or taken by other animals or taken by humans. We collect them and protect them until they hatch naturally.
This is a pretty special experience. Green turtles only lay eggs about 6 or 7 times a year. When they do, they lay about 100 eggs. They feel very vulnerable, and it takes them about an hour.
Seeing turtles up close like this is a real privilege. These beaches are very remote and tourist numbers here are strictly limited. But if you get lucky, it's something that you'll never forget. Every year, around 60,000 baby turtles are born here at the sanctuary. And once they hatch, they all scuttle down to the sea, guided by the moonlight to the water's edge and their uncertain future. Because only a tiny percentage will survive and reach adulthood. The rest will fall prey to humans or the many other predators they face. But in years to come, those that do survive will return here, back to the very beach where they were born to lay their own eggs and continue the fight for survival.
Well, I've come to the end of my trip now, and I've got to say, for a country that spent years in isolation and has suffered more than most, the people here are incredibly resilient, industrious, and welcoming.
A hangover from isolation and strict one-party state control is the fact that for the first time in any of my trips for this series, we had a government minder with us during all filming. They didn't interfere, but their mere presence hinted at a lingering paranoia and suspicion of the outside world. And that's a shame, because I've enjoyed my time here. So far, this country has mercifully not succumbed to the tacky commercialism of many other destinations in Southeast Asia.
I think if this country can avoid the temptation to go for the easy, fast buck, then in the long term, it'll become a favourite of adventurous travellers for generations to come.